Hey everybody, I thought I'd do another one of these design videos. Again, I took some pictures of my trees with a little bit of a neutral background, and then I'm going to get on the iPad here and I'll switch over there now, and we'll take a look at this eastern white pine, Pinus strobus, that I took this picture of. And so right now, I think per the way that I've done it in the past, take a look at the front and the back. This, I think, is my current proposed back. And the reason why I'm thinking that is that, just make sure I'm on, yeah. This branch here and this branch here are both, they're originating out of the trunk in such a way that they kind of go toward the back now, particularly this upper one. You can't really tell super well from the picture, but it does originate out toward the back. And that's not necessarily like a huge problem, but if we have an option to do something different, which we do, moving things toward the front, toward the viewer, that's something that we want to take a look at and explore doing. Another thing of note, I'm going to switch to a little finer here. In the past, I've talked about the way that branches grow and how, sometimes you'll hear in bonsai this concept of a bar branch, which is where think of the letter T, where there's the trunk in the center and then the branches coming out. Well, this one had some issues with, like all pines, it grows multiple branches from the same spot, and that in nature is great because you want to take advantage of sunlight and CO2 penetration on all sides, but in the case of bonsai, where we don't want a thick area further up on the trunk, you want to try to eliminate that. So there was in the past a branch coming out here, and there was a branch coming out here, and there probably were multiples of those. Maybe 5 branches even coming out like this and like this and like this. And that creates these knuckles, sometimes called a whorl. In general, we want to leave the branches and the needles and everything on the tree long enough that they're able to help the tree grow. But you can see here, and maybe I'll zoom in a little bit. You could see this area right here, the width across here is considerably thicker than it is above, which is fine, but below even too, down here, this width. And this specific issue won't be a problem in the long term. All of this will come out and even out across time. But if you let that grow and grow and grow to the point where it's, this big, which is not at all out of the realm of possibility, that's where you can come up with this issue of reverse taper, these structural flaws, things that you aren't going to be able to fix in the long run. Now, if you have a tree that's older and it has that, work with it. The flaws are beautiful, but if you're trying to avoid it, that's removing branches is kind of the only way that you're able to do that. You can also slow branches down by cutting them back, but in general, that's why I removed those branches. Let's see, the ones that are on there now, I removed those this year to try and start to think about developing the structure of the tree. So again, this is the back, I think. The back often is the second best front to some extent. So let's go over to what I think is maybe the best front. Okay, so that is this side. So this is just flipped 180 degrees. And now hopefully you can see, let me make sure I'm on a layer that I want to mess with here. Hopefully you can see this branch here. Oops, I guess it's hidden. Hopefully you can see this branch here is coming out toward the viewer a little bit more than before. This one here is coming out a little bit more to the side. It's just the branch origination angle is ever so slightly better. Now, if both of these were optimal for for a slight rotation, you could think about changing the planting angle within the pot. So that would be, when you go to repot and thinking about the front, you could take it and rotate it this way if you wanted to, or vice versa, just depending. So it's not like you've picked your front and now you have to make the branches work. You can always adjust the front over time. So that's a little bit of an orientation to the tree. I think those are the main reasons why I would select this as the front. So maybe I thought we could talk about future styling, future design ideas. I think this one is the most wide open. I will say I anticipate probably taking this out of such a small pot and putting it into something bigger to try to get some more girth on the trunk and drive a little more back budding per our previous conversations. But putting that aside, if we just think about the long term, working with what we got here, what might we do? And I think this is probably a discussion of knowing when to stop or knowing how much to take off. How drastic do you want to be? And so I thought I would do this kind of escalating series of actions and see where that takes us. So I'm going to move the tree over here. And so I'm going to be using layers that I've already pre-populated to do a series of things to hopefully see the effect that they have. So let's see. So we'll take that off. So the first one here, I would say these two bottom branches, the first two branches coming up from the base of the trunk, at the moment, I've wired them into a position where they can contribute to the design. And so most of the removal, the obvious removal, would be up at the top. And so starting up at the top, we could do something like this. Okay. So I mentioned the bar branch thing. Well, I will say, so if we look at that, at this particular layer here, there's definitely a bar branch right here, maybe multiple bar branches. But because they're young and because they're currently not causing any swelling, I've left them on to help develop the tree. But in the course of the design, we're going to maybe think about removing one of those bar branches. So the other thing of note here, and maybe if we get onto this layer, is now we have a branch coming out left, right, left, and we have it coming out sort of, and this is, I've tried to bend this somewhat with previous iterations of wire, sort of on the outside of a curve here, kind of on the outside of a curve here, though that's, pushing it, and then outside of a curve here. So those are the idea of alternating branches, that they're not going to shade each other. This branch will have a harder time shading this branch being further down than if you had a branch coming off over here shading down here. So that's the first option. So if we keep going, we're not happy with that, we're going to go ahead and maybe remove some off the top there to start to compress the design down, start to think about developing an apex. And now in this region, we've got an apex, and we have our last major branch, structural branch coming off here. All right, an alternate to that might be, no, actually, we want our apex to be out this way more. We want this to be our new apex. Create a little bit more of an asymmetrical design. That's the next option there. Let's see if we put this on and leave this here. Maybe we compact in and just have a much smaller apex. These are just some design explorations. Let's see here. Put that back. Let's go drastic. Let's take the whole top off down to this branch here. So it definitely compacts the design considerably. To me, and just to toggle these off and on, in some ways, it gives a little bit more of a focus, I think you could say, to this part of the line. It's a little more of an elegant line. Let's toggle it off and on. I think that the line up top is actually quite nice too, though. Talking about right there. This part of the line is actually quite nice, quite elegant. So maybe that isn't something we would want to do. But again, we're trying to figure out knowing when to stop, and it's easier to put the branches back on the iPad than it is in real life. So maybe we do something like this. We start to create something like what would maybe be considered a literati. This would be like a very small literati. And you could even consider, because let me get on the layer, because this branch here is so slender, you could actually very easily bring it in this way to where the point where the branch comes down parallel with the trunk and kind of out like this to create a really elegant, dramatic literati type design. That's something, in traditional bonsai, I think that's something that would traditionally be used with a Japanese red pine, Pinus densiflora. Pinus strobus is more generally related to, it's a white pine, five needle pine, like a Japanese five needle pine, parviflora. But rules are meant to be broken. So that would be a crazy, probably the most dramatic so far that we've explored. Let's take a look at one more option here. I think I want to turn this one off and this one on. So I've simulated a little bit of a deadwood left behind at the top there. This could then be trained into some kind of a crazy cascading form, or it could just be more compact. Could be any of those things. As we were exploring a second ago, there's a design idea that came up that I hadn't explored otherwise before, which would be an even taller literati design. Maybe that's something you all were seeing in your, which would be to, oops, managed to not do that yet. Put that on, which would be to take all of this off. And you could start there. It's got a different vibe from where we just were. Or even to take this off. The thing about literati, I think, based on my reading at least, is that since it's very easy to have tall, long, spindly trees with not enough branching to do anything else, it becomes a very common thing that people try to say that it is a literati design, when in reality it's just a poor quality stock. I don't know anything else to do with it, which is, ultimately it's not a judgment, but I think my main thought about it is to be judicious in the application of the literati design and see if we can't develop things slightly differently to have a little more backbudding, a little more character, more branching. Because the other thing about true literati design, as far as I understand it, is that the trees are supposed, like in general, to be acceptable literati design within tradition. The trees are very, very old, and they are remarkable and challenging to make insofar as to have a very old tree with a slender trunk line is actually very, very difficult, because trees want to thicken up. They want to have more vascular tissue. They want to keep growing. So all that to say, a 5-year-old Japanese black pine that just didn't have good branching down low and you couldn't get backbudding on, swooping and shaped into something crazy. Well, it is sort of in that style of the Bunjin, calligraphy, in calligraphy themed or calligraphy inspired literati design. If we can think about other options, we can. But this is an interesting. It's very cool. The length of the lines there is kind of interesting. Just to toggle back off and on, and to contrast that with that and that. Interesting. The good news for us, is I don't think that the trunk is nearly thick enough for what I'm looking to achieve through the tree. And so as a result of that, I am going to probably end up letting the whole, if we go back to the very base, oops, I would not do that last one that I just flashed onto, because you'd be done. So this is the tree again as it stands. My guess is I will probably move this into a bigger pot and let it grow for the next little bit. And I will hope against hope. I'll just work on this layer, or no, I'll go up to the top here. Let's add another layer. I will hope that I'm able to get some back buds here and here and here and here and here and here, in these areas in close, and maybe even something crazy down here to help thicken up the trunk. I don't count on that happening, but we'll see. I think at this point, I'll probably just keep an eye on structural flaws. I will almost certainly move this into a larger pot, something in this range, maybe not quite so big, but to try and boost the vigor, grow the trunk line, develop the tree more. But I think part of my point in sharing this and talking through it is, I don't know what I'm doing with it yet. So that's cool. It's exciting to think about options. But also to note that even as we're developing trees and thickening them up, and it's a ways away from being a final product, I'm still thinking about the design, and I'm still considering what I might want to do with it down the line. And if I can make good decisions now to try and promote that, that's great. So of all of the designs, I think as far as the ones that appealed to me, the one that I probably like the most, oops, not that one, is probably something along this lines. I don't know if that would be the final product. I would maybe consider bringing let's see, I would maybe consider bringing this branch here up a little bit, something maybe even a little bit more out in this range if I were going to keep this, as the final design. But I might just leave it like it is too. Could end up getting some back budding here, which could then, start to form an apex of sorts. But in order for this part of the trunk to thicken up, I'm going to need to leave some top material on. So, so I think the odds are, what this will end up looking like is that this year I'm going to let it, I'll put it in a bigger pot, let everything grow. I will let this part of the trunk line, which is on a hidden layer apparently, I'll let this part of the trunk line grow, and I'll probably consider getting rid of the branches. Maybe change to an airbrush. Getting rid of these branches over time and just letting that trunk line extend and keeping a little bit of green out here at the tip the whole time. And again, as this thickens, as this thickens and grows out this way, the trunk line will thicken and thicken and thicken. And at that point, I could then think about coming back and removing this to the point where the tree is thicker. So that's the conceptual idea, at least. So I'll go back one more time to the full tree there. You tell me what you all think. Tell me which branches you would think about getting rid of. Let's see, I'll label them so you can give me a reference here. We'll call this one branch A. Maybe not so big. Call this one branch A, branch B, branch C, branch group D, and branch group E. And tell me which ones you think you would work with or which ones you think you would get rid of. I hope this is, again, helpful, and I really enjoy doing them, so at the very least, I'm having fun. Hope you are too. Please, if you haven't liked and subscribed, go ahead and do that, and I will see you in the next video.